Good evening. The Planning Commission meeting of April 15, 2026 is called to order. The Planning Commission meeting is being broadcasted live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable Channel 6 and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition in the city's webpage, glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called Cablecast and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city's website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. Current Planning Commission agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Tarakian?
Here.
Commissioner Malikian?
Present.
Commissioner Manassian?
Here.
Commissioner Nazarian?
Here.
And Chairperson Fuentes.
Here. Reports regarding posting of agenda.
The agenda for the April 15th, 2026 regular meeting of the Glendale Planning Commission was posted on April 8th, 2026 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Approval of our minutes of April 1st, 2025.
So moved. Second.
It's approved. I don't have any oral communications cards, so we'll go on to board and commission member comments. Let's start with Vista. You have some introduction or announcement?
So last night at Glendale City Council, Mr. Jack Wong was appointed as Interim Director of Community Development. He will be with us for the next several months. We're excited to have him. He has a lot of experience in the planning field going back many years, and it's a welcome addition to the team.
Sure.
Welcome.
Mr. Wong, do you want to say something?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I hope I could be a valuable asset to the city and the community. I hope that we could move projects along and improve the living conditions, business environment, and whatever we can do at City Hall to make lives better. I'm here to help, and I like to meet people. So if anybody has any urge to come by to say hello, please do. I'm
Okay.
here at City Hall, regular hours, and but it's going to be a pleasure working with you all. Looking forward
Okay,
to it.
well, welcome. Thank you
Thank you.
very much. Okay, second board, any board commission comments or anything? I have a reminder on the monitor. We have a community outreach workshop, and it's tomorrow. I already announced it at the last meeting. It's free and open to all. It will be given by our Glendale Police Department. It's about AI, preventing and recognizing scams, fraud, and identity theft. It's going to be from 5:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Glendale YMCA, 140 North Louis Street, Glendale, California. Again, it's free and open to all. You're welcome to attend and get some tips on how to avoid and prevent scams and fraud and all that. Thank you. Okay, moving on to old business. Item A, please read the item on the record.
Sure. This is an appeal of the planning hearing officer decision to deny a street front setback and retaining wall height standard variance to maintain an existing unpermitted retaining wall that exceeds the allowable height above existing grade with a fence that's non-retaining with a non-retaining wall on top and a driveway gate, all within the required 15-foot street front setback area on an approximately 16,480 square foot lot located at 3411 East Chevy Chase Drive in the R1R FAR District 3 zone, described as lot number 4, track number 22757. This is an appeal of variance case number PVAR-004061-2024. This item was continued from our March 18th meeting, and just before I turn it over to the case planner, I do want to make an announcement. The decision that is rendered here today is the date of the decision. An appeal can be filed within 15 days of that date online, glendaleca.gov/permits. And with that, I will turn it over to the case planner, Ms. Toledo.
Okay, so again, I'd like to just go through the procedures for appeal. And I wanted to find out from the commissioners, because last time we heard this case, there were only 3 of us. So if the pleasure of the...
You didn't hear the, well, yeah, actually.
She wasn't here. He wasn't here. And I think he wasn't here. So we're going to go through the actual presentation and everything. Okay. We will conduct the hearing in the following manner. Already announced by the staff. Staff will give a brief overview of the application and decision, and the appellant or his or her representative will submit facts of statements relative to the appeal within a 15-minute time limit. Where the appellant is not the applicant or his or her authorized representative will submit facts of statements within a 15-minute time limit. The chairperson may request the planning hearing officer to provide his or her rationale for the decision or ask other questions. Other individuals, if any, will speak within a 3-minute time limit at the discretion of the chair. The appellant may present a rebuttal within a 5-minute time limit, or the chairperson may designate the time limit. Rebuttals shall be limited to addressing only issues discussed earlier in the public hearing. After testimony from all speakers, the chair will close the public hearing. No further testimony will be taken unless specific questions are directed by commissioners or unless the commission opens the public hearing. After deliberating, the commission will take one of 4 actions: find in favor of the appellant, find in favor of the planning hearing officer, make no decision and remand the matter to the planning hearing officer, or continue the matter. Any individual not satisfied with the commission's decision may file an appeal to the City Council. This is done by filing a notice of appeal along with a filing fee at the Building and Safety Division located at 633 East Broadway, Room 101, Glendale. Telephone number 818-548-3200. Any appeal must be filed within 15 days. And with that, let's hear from the hearing officer.
Okay, so thank you, Commissioners. I'm the case planner for this project. Looking at 3411 East Chevy Chase Drive. As was stated earlier, the project involves an appeal of a variance that was originally heard and decided on by the planning hearing officer for a new fence. Currently is existing, it's unpermitted. So in this case, the hearing officer rendered a decision to deny the case because all 4 required findings could not be made in favor and support of the request. So subsequently, it was appealed, and the applicant and the appellant is the same. Once again, the appeal involves denial of a street front setback and retaining wall height standard variance to maintain an existing unpermitted retaining wall that exceeds the allowable height above existing grade with a fence, which is non-retaining wall on top, and a driveway gate, all within the required 15-foot street front setback. And the lot size is approximately 16,480 square feet, located in the R1R Floor Area Ratio District 3. And currently, the site is developed with a one-story single-family house, approximately 1988 square feet, built in 1958. And the images on the slide show both the location map and zoning map, as well as an aerial view of the subject site, highlighted in yellow. And I'll kind of describe the property in a bit, but I don't want to go into too much since it's already described in the staff report. So I'd like to kind of jump straight as much as possible just to kind of keep the hearing moving along. The property, again, it has frontage on both the south and southeast. It's on Chevy Chase Drive, gradually sloping up from Chevy Chase Drive towards the northeast. Again, the house is located on a relatively flat portion of the lot. It is a very irregular lot, sort of like a U shape, if you will. And again, currently it's developed with a one-story house, and there are protected trees, both oak and sycamore trees, on and within 20 feet of the subject site, all which are proposed to be preserved. The applicant's proposal, again, involves the legalization and maintenance of that existing retaining wall, varying in height from approximately 3 to 6 feet, and a non-retaining wall or fence on top of the retaining wall, varying in height from approximately 4 to 6 feet, and an approximately 8 to 9 foot high driveway gate, all located within the required 15-foot street front setback area. The retaining wall, the fence on top, and the driveway gate are located within the front south side of the property, ranging from 1 foot 1 inch to 7 feet 7 inches. That's the front setback. From the street front property line along the southwest side of the property, again facing East Chevy Chase Drive. And so here I'm including some of the images of the current form and location of the wall and the fence on top, as well as the driveway gate. The code requires that walls or retaining walls within the street front setback area are to be limited to a maximum of 18 inches above grade and an overall height of 5 feet is the maximum limit in this case, and a non-retaining walls, fences, gates are not allowed within the street front setback area. The site plan here shows the retaining wall, again varying in height from approximately 3 to 6 feet, a non-retaining wall or the fence on top ranging in height from 4 to 6 feet, and the driveway gate, again, all located within the street front setback. And we've already kind of discussed the location or setback from the front property line, but just to reiterate, it's ranging from 1 foot 1 inch to 7 feet 7 inches from the street front property line along the southwest side of Chevy Chase, East Chevy Chase Drive. The comments that were received from other departments are included and attached as an exhibit. There were comments that were submitted by our Public Works Engineering team as well as our Public Works Urban Forestry team. So for questions regarding those comments, again, they're included in your packet. So I will move along. In terms of findings, there are 4 required findings that need to be made in order to approve a variance request. And as stated earlier, the planning hearing officer determined that all 4 required findings could not be made in favor of the request. Summary of the planning hearing officer's decision. Some of the bullet points, for example, the previous variance request for retaining wall and fence located within the street front setback was originally denied by the then zoning administrator due to the inability to make the required findings. And that, again, that was related to a previous, I just want to emphasize, a previous zoning, or in this case, previous variance request for a similar situation, not the exact same fence, but a previous iteration years back. And I want to say that was back in maybe 2004, 2005. But that was one of the points that was brought up by the hearing officer in her decision letter. Another point, similar to the previous variance case, the hearing officer determined that the subject variance request did not demonstrate existing practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship necessary to justify the variance, consistent with the general purposes and intent of the setback ordinance. Another point that was brought up in the decision letter was that the subject wall and fence had not been modified, had been modified compared to previous, greater in terms of height and resulting in a code enforcement case that was enacted. Also, the maintenance of the existing unpermitted wall and fence and driveway gate does not constitute a hardship. The existing house was built and maintained for many years without a wall or fence or gate, and the front yard topographical alterations were made to increase the grade level. And no evidence was received suggesting that site conditions can't be restored or code-complying retaining walls be built without practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship. Continuing with the summary of the planning hearing officer's decision, she also determined that there were no exceptional circumstances related to the property, that the subject hillside lot was similar to those in the surrounding neighborhood and existing conditions, which involve sloping topography, sharply curved street, and protected trees, which are not unusual in the neighborhood. The site conditions did not justify, more than any other site in the neighborhood, the retaining wall and the fence required by the subject variance request. The requested 12-foot high wall and fence and the 9-foot high driveway gate conflicts with the hillside development review policy outlined in the zoning code. The neighborhood does not feature a wall within the street front setback of the magnitude proposed and requested for the subject site. The 12-foot high wall and fence and 9-foot high driveway gate within the front setback is incompatible with the surrounding neighborhood, and that the proposed wall and fence and the gate did not warrant, was not warranted based on the physical conditions of the property, conflicting with the objectives of the ordinance. In terms of the analysis of the appeal, the appellant alleges that there was a violation of a specific provision of the law, which formed the basis of the appeal. The hearing officer exceeded their authority by virtue of any provisions of the law. Also, the hearing officer failed to fulfill mandatory duty by any provision of the law, and then the hearing officer also refused to hear or consider certain facts before rendering their decision. Evidence before the planning hearing officer was insufficient or inadequate to support their action, and that also the appellant contends that they have new evidence or materials that was not previously presented, which if were to be considered, could change the ruling. In addition, the appellant alleges that the hearing officer's decision to deny the variance request was based on incomplete factual record, overly restrictive interpretation of the variance standards, also that the hearing officer exceeded the scope of authority outlined in the zoning code in chapter 30.43030, which is remedial and flexible rather than punitive, and procedural and substantive errors under chapter 30.43 of the zoning code. Also, the staff's analysis, I missed something. Oh, in terms of a response to the appellant's allegations, in this case, staff as mentioned in the report, they determined that the hearing officer did consider the application submitted, the plans, and the exhibit. A variance request is a discretionary action under the Glendale Municipal Code, meaning that the planning hearing officer is not compelled to approve the variance request. Moreover, the planning hearing officer must deny a variance request if all required findings cannot be made in support of the request. And they may deny the request, again, if the conditions creating the need for the variance were self-imposed. So once again, the hearing officer did consider the application submitted, the plans, the exhibits, the maps, the photos, everything that was included as part of the case file, as well as city permit records and previous entitlements, as I referred to earlier, previous entitlements associated with the property, site observations that the hearing officer conducted, as well as departmental comments, public testimony received, presented at the public hearing, and written correspondence, written submissions at the time, and the applicant's slide presentation as well. That was presented at the public hearing by the applicant. In addition, the hearing officer determined that sufficient information was submitted, or that they had, in this case, she had sufficient information to render her decision, and that she determined that all 4 required findings at the end of the day could not be made. Going back to staff's analysis of the appeal, and this is also mentioned in the report, the planning hearing officer did ask specific questions directly to the applicant related to the variance request, the subject site, et cetera, for purposes of, again, obtaining more clarity and a better understanding associated with the site conditions and safety concerns expressed by the applicant. But once again, the planning hearing officer believed that at the end of the day, the 4 required findings necessary could not be made. So ultimately, the hearing officer denied the request for the wall in question. Staff's recommendation is that the Planning Commission sustain the planning hearing officer's decision outlined in the decision letter dated July 29th, 2025, denying the variance request. However, if the Planning Commission is inclined to reverse the planning hearing officer's decision and approve the application, staff recommends that this matter be continued for purposes of being able to allow staff time to prepare findings in support of the Planning Commission's decision if they so decide to approve and reverse the decision made by the hearing officer. We did receive more correspondence in addition to the correspondence that we had received or at the time of the planning hearing officer hearing. We received additional correspondence, about 12, so we've forwarded those all to the commission and provided copies as well. With that, I will conclude my remarks. If you have any questions, I am available.
Thank you. Question? Commissioner Enrique?
Thank you for the presentation. I have 2 questions. One is, has the applicant reached out to you and I'm assuming you guys had conversation and discussed, and they still went ahead and pursued the appeal, correct? So you
Yes.
have discussed.
Yes, the applicant, if I recall, had even mentioned that even at the public hearing that they had already in advance met with our planning staff at the public counter, if I recall, originally.
My second question is, does the staff review the, how would I put this? Do you only review the application and the plans that are given to you only based on the variance, or do you look at the entire property? Do you look at other issues that are there that it's kind of not taken into consideration that there's violations on the property?
We're looking strictly at the variance request. If there's something obvious,
I mean, it just
but it
stands
just
out right
depends.
now based on the front yard landscaping, it's all concrete, so simple as that. So if the wall is there and it's all concrete, isn't that a
Right, so for example, if a project were to move forward into a plan check process, or let's say we're preparing a staff report, and if I recall, that point might have been somewhat discussed in the original staff report, because if I recall, there was even a suggested condition of approval made by the case planner. I'd have to go back just to
see.
confirm that point. That included a suggestion about including, maybe adding more trees, making sure that the landscape complies with our zoning code, et cetera. So I believe, and I'll go back just to confirm, that there was some mention of that. But yeah, I mean, we typically, during the plan check process, for any project, we would
Well, I'm just
ask,
talking about the variance process that, it's just going through.
case by case.
Got
Yeah, we sometimes, yeah, we may bring it up, or we may not. We just focus strictly on what's in front of us. If something is clearly obvious that needs to be included as part of a variance request, then we would identify that as well.
All right, thank you.
Questions?
Chair Fuentes, I have one question. In the staff report, it says basically in October of 2004, a variance for the subject retaining wall and fence was denied by the zoning administrator due to inability to make the findings. Following this denial, the subject wall and fence remained and was not removed, and then was modified to a greater height. So am I understanding correctly, like in 22 years ago, this was declined, and it's been in non-compliance for 22 years. So what's happened between then, and why are we seeing it so far down the line?
I cannot speak 100% on all of what has transpired over the last 20 years. I can only speak as to what the record shows. So what happened between 2024 and 20 years later, I don't have that information. It has not been forwarded to me. So, and I don't know why the case, what happened. We would have to follow up with our code enforcement team at the time.
Understood. Thank you. That's all for now.
Question? Yes.
Can we go back to the site plan, please, where we had the topo and it was dated, yes, right there. The date on this, I'm looking at it, is June 24. Do we know if this is, since then, any changes happen? Is this current and recent, the information on this?
This would be current and recent. This is what was submitted with the variance application packet.
And I'm not sure if anyone can answer this question, but if you zoom in on the bottom left corner, I'm trying to understand behind that wall, the elevation. The way I'm reading this map, it's as if that wall is 6 feet on both sides. Is that true, or I thought the inside is higher? Is the applicant or owner, anyone here that can,
The applicant is here.
okay.
Applicant owner is here, so she will be able to respond to that.
Okay. I guess before that, then on this letter from Chevy Chase State Association, nice letter here, there's a good image from March of 2019. Can we go to that page, please? If you have it, if you can look at it, that page.
Is it in one of the correspondence letters that you
It's the big
received?
package that we received here
Okay.
just
Yeah.
shortly
Let
before
me
the
get
meeting.
to, is this from the Chevy Chase Homeowners Association?
Yeah,
Okay.
it looks like this.
Okay, I believe this is the one you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not super clear. Is there a wall there along that property back in 2019?
So there was a wall, and that is, yes, that is a wall. And but it's very different than what the current condition shows.
The same location?
It's approximately, yes. I mean, I would have to, I'm just making an assumption. It's approximately in the same location, but I'm not 100% sure. And the only reason why I would say could possibly be because based on some of the history that we've researched, it seemed to be, if I'd have to go to an image where the way the fence is, or that lower wall, it looks like there was another portion of the fence on top. That's what we see today.
Okay. And if
I think
you-
that was, if I recall, what the comments that were raised by the planning hearing officer or points raised in the decision letter. That it seemed that wall was amplified, if you will, or modified to a greater extent.
So I guess that's going to be a tough question, but was this 2019 wall in violation of the code, I assume, as well?
I would need to look at the history.
It goes back to
From the beginning.
2004.
From 2004.
Well, I don't have a 2004 picture, I'm just looking at what's available here. If you don't mind going a few pages forward where it shows, it's page 7 of the letter. We were on page 3, if you go 4 page forward. I'm confused that bottom view, which part we're looking at it. I'm trying to understand that bottom picture there.
Are we looking at this
Page
image
7.
here?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
So the bottom view would be the interior of the wall. So as the wall is viewed, let's say if you were standing in front of the house, looking at the wall. It's the interior face of the wall.
Is it safe to say I walked through the gate and turned left?
Yes.
And Chevy Chase is on my left side now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so the elevation is that low there. Then the survey, it's not matching this picture, for sure. I was confused between the survey and these pictures, and now I'm clear what I'm seeing, but I still don't understand how this survey can be that much off. But those were the questions I had. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, then we'll call the applicant, Amy. That's Sakanian. Good.
Good evening. First, I want to start by saying thank you for allowing us to continue to have the availability of all of you to appear in front of today, first and foremost. And I'm happy to address any questions to the extent that I can that were just presented, but I do want to speak plainly in addition to the substantial packets in front of you as far as the original variance, the appeal, the staff reports that were prepared, to really focus and take this opportunity to speak to what's been the goal since submitting that variance application, because we're the property owners that inherited the existing wall as it is today. And like that was highlighted, since 2004, it seems that the previous ownership, however many or however few they have been, have not been in compliance. So I do want to highlight us being here today and taking the city's time is to find a path in good faith to work with the city, to find a solution that balances our concerns as a property owner with the intent behind the codes and the guidelines applicable to the city and to our neighborhood. So I do want to reiterate, that's our goal behind the variance, behind our appeal, and what we're hoping to get the opportunity to do to work with the city staff and find that kind of solution that allows us to balance the concerns we've presented while maintaining the integrity of what's behind these codes and why they exist to begin with. And really that focuses on what's in front of you as far as our safety concerns, given the characteristics of the property, the issues that we're facing, given that this is a wall that's already been built, and us being unable to really guess versus estimate how much damage would be caused because of that structural impact of its existing location and its features, and other things such as those protected trees that we have, which are within that within the vicinity that's nearby. More specifically, we appreciate that there's reference to, being comparable properties and some things that were presented by neighbors or other people vocal to make comparisons of the property. We respectfully wanted to reiterate the specific circumstances and features of the home, where if the wall is removed entirely, it does create some visibility and protection challenges that we want to reiterate. And in addition to that, we have the issue of those protected trees where the existing oak tree, for example, it is, from what I understand based on discussions with a couple contractors, the root system extends within the drip line and it's likely beneath the wall footing. So I just want to take the opportunity again today to present our intention rather than strict application for the purpose of enforcing these codes in and of themselves. We want to implore what the intention behind the variance function and why it's in our city code to begin with, to find a balance, a reasonable solution that allows us to maintain and address these concerns as a property owner in these circumstances, while finding a way to maintain the integrity of what's the intention behind these codes. Some of the solutions we had kind of opened the floor and were willing to anything the city would suggest. Some of those were foliage, for example. But if the city implores us to lower it, like you saw in the 2019 footage, for example, where it seems a little lower in its current location, from what I understand, we're open to lowering it a few feet, however many feet, again, to keep it in its location, but again, to find a balance of the concerns that have been vocalized, first and foremost. If it's helpful to add foliage like ficus trees or anything to even block that from view, aesthetically, we are open to any suggestions the city would make. And for example, the mention of the concrete or the material that it's in, as we've inherited, we're open to any alternatives. Let's say natural colors that look more similar to stone or anything else that allows us the opportunity to work with the city and find a way to find kind of a Goldilocks, if you will, in between. That's really what I was hoping to vocalize today, and just to allow us the chance to clarify, since 2004, whatever the previous ownership has done, we're the first owners who have shown up and tried to work with the city and had their help to go about this the right way, to not waste the city's time, but to try to find a solution that's fair and respects what the proper channels are for us to take. So we want to make sure that that's abundantly clear. We want to find something that makes sense for everyone, satisfies the aesthetic concerns of the neighborhood, respects the city's protocols, but allows us to have a fair opportunity to do things for our property interests as well.
How long has the current property owners owned the property?
We purchased the property around 2024 March.
2024.
Correct. And at that time, there was a citation in place. The city inspector, Ernie Jimenez, we met with him. We conveyed to him that we understand what the situation is. We want to work with you to see what are our options. And that's when we went and spoke with staff and understood a variance application would be the proper channel. But based on what our understanding is, the previous owner either disregarded citations, took no action, wasn't collaborating. So we bought this property and have not made any changes to make the circumstances worse. We're just looking for the opportunity to find a middle ground to improve them with the approval of the city, of course. Otherwise, it's as we purchased it.
Okay. Questions?
Chair Fuentes, thank you. Quick question for you. Whenever you started your preliminary discussions after acquiring the property and you guys met with the city and it was determined that you were going to submit a variance, was there any dialogue with the city surrounding scaling the wall back, modifying the wall to make it something that would garner a more positive result in their opinion from the planning officer? Or was the thought process, let's just submit and see if the city will be signed off with something that's already pre-existing in the building, and then we can figure it out later? I just want to understand what were the steps that went into submitting it exactly as is.
Sure. Candidly, the way that we positioned it, and maybe it could have been worded more specifically, what we tried to do in the original application was open the door to suggestions as far as contingent approval, for example. But the interest there, although it wasn't really specifically discussed as far as lowering as one of the options, what we posed our position was we're open to any suggestions the city will make to allow for an approval with kind of contingencies. And so I think it wasn't just abundantly clear in the original application that that's one of the things we were willing to do. The intent behind the application was to convey, we're open to any considerations the city has for this to be approved in a way that makes sense to the city and to kind of address the concerns in the application.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You next? No? Okay.
Quick question. So again, coming back to the view, I was asking the staff member, this little palm tree here inside, is there any way you can point that on that color exhibit where roughly that is?
Roughly where that is, if we're looking, so we're talking about that kind of brown colored portion, right? Is that's fair to say that's the home? If we look at the left-hand side of that, it's between kind of where that rectangle is in the left-hand side. If you look a little to the right, or if, would it help if I just go point it out?
Sure, if you
just
don't
to
mind.
be more clear? This is approximately where, and I'm happy to share more specifics if need
You're not
be,
gonna
but
be
I-
okay.
Yeah, just show us, that's it, yeah.
Point, but we have to have you talk into
I'm
the
so
mic.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah,
just-
that's
sorry.
okay. No, my bad. So is it safe to say if you're standing in that area inside
Yeah.
and versus outside of the wall, you're almost same elevation?
Do you mind asking me one more time? Please
So if,
forgive me.
where that palm tree is, if you're standing next to that tree,
Okay.
behind the wall in this picture, would you say you're relatively same elevation, that you will see the wall same height on both sides?
I don't believe so. There is some level of standing a little lower. So if you're standing at the outside of the property looking at
You're a
the
little
wall,
lower?
you would be standing a little bit lower, but if you're standing in front of the house facing the wall,
Okay.
it would be a position a little bit higher.
I guess what I'm trying to make it clear, if that wall is gone, I'm trying to understand how much higher that elevation is and what's the slope is going to look like. That's what, and that's survey, whoever did that survey, by the way, maybe we should talk to that person because the elevation over there is very confusing and I don't think it's accurate at all. Per that survey, it's saying that the behind the wall is 6.5 feet higher than the street. And that just, it is?
That's fair so the way that it looks in terms of that far left corner, if you're standing on Chevy Chase, looking at the home and facing the wall, the issue that we're having, do you see in that left image where there's the electric pole or something? Yes. So that portion, when you're facing the wall from the street, when you're inside the home facing the wall, it is higher from inside than when you're standing on the street. So I'm happy to make sure those numbers are correct. Forgive me, I'm not
That's okay.
prepared
That's okay.
myself, but there is that kind of a difference, which is one of those issues that we're trying to address given that structural and retaining impact. If that has to be entirely removed, that's what we're respectfully arguing has a disproportionately negative impact. And as you go along, if it's entirely removed from that location, again, with respect for what Ms. Toledo conveyed as far as not having clarity as to what's happened with the previous ownership since 2004, what's been a concern of ours and a consistent roadblock, if you will, is the uncertainty, the concept of a guess versus an estimate of what kind of damage will be caused if that wall is removed entirely. So that's why I want to kind of reiterate, if there's some kind of middle ground where we can maintain its location, but to the extent possible, work with the city to find where this can be lowered to the extent possible to satisfy the concerns of the city and our fellow constituents, whatever it might be. But there is that issue of it existing in this circumstance with that level of retained portion. And the really, like, it's not as clean cut of a solution, if you will, as far as removing it entirely. So that exhaustive, again, strict application for the sake of compliance with the code, that's what we're hoping to reiterate allows for some grace to find a different solution that makes sense across the board.
Okay.
Can I? Thank you. So I have a question. I guess we can't deliberate, but I have a question for you. We're here for a variance, and you're appealing the variance. So, but what you're presenting to us is to come up with options for us to be able to allow you to either modify, alter, or do whatever it takes to somehow maintain a portion, if not all of it. Wouldn't that be a meeting that you need to have with staff and with your designer, architects, and engineers, and then come up with a solution and figure out a solution? And then if the solution is not presented, and if not, then you have to figure out one way or another to come and get a variance on the modified solution, not, because right now we're reviewing what you have there.
Right.
This is not a design review board, this is a planning commission. So we're going to be reviewing what it's been presented to the hearing officer, and you appeal that hearing. And now we're here to listen to you as you presented that it was not fair hearing, and that's why you appeal that. So your presentation today, I hear that you want to find a solution to keep that, but that solution is not this board, that we're going to be able to design this for you.
Sure.
So I just want to be clear on that, unless I'm missing something here, because I think the drawings that is been presented, there's some errors in there. I don't see the trees, I don't see the oak trees that you mentioned, elevations are off, or so, there's a lot of that. So I would highly recommend for a revisit of this and meeting with staff and figuring out an alternative, that it may result in for you to come back for a variance, because that's the only way that's possible, right? But at this moment, we're going to be reviewing why it was appealed, and we're going to make our decision based on that, just being clear.
I appreciate it.
Basically, we have to make a decision today based on all the information that you have submitted and was heard by the planning hearing officer and what's before us today, so.
May I address that point, by the way? Because I appreciate I appreciate this is kind of a dark horse, if you will, where this is being done in the reverse order. So thank you for giving us the grace to kind of explain a little further. The issue that we faced and why we went this route, this has already been built. We didn't have that opportunity, right, to present to a design board what can we use as the materials or what heights are possible for us. So I don't want to misspeak as to what's being referred to as the inaccurate elevations or anything. I don't want to misspeak to, reinforce or one way or the other. But we were faced with one of those situations of uncertainty, given this is kind of unusual. So we just wanted to put our foot forward specifically to understand if we can go through the variance process, because we do believe the elements for a variance, those four specific parts, those are arguments made in good faith that we stand by. And the hearing and the facts that were given more weight to find the planning officer's position. With respect, that's where the arguments within the appeal were found. So kind of to bring it back, aside from what's been discussed thus far, that's the issue that we had of this being a non-traditional circumstance where the issue at hand already exists and it's been inherited by a new owner, rather than being, previous bad behavior. And, we just want that to be a thing to be considered, where we're the new owners inheriting a mess and trying to make what was done wrong and adjust it appropriately. So that's why we considered the variance process as our initial step. With respect, we just did not consider going down that route of coming up with alternative designs, because we wanted to, again, we sincerely believe in the facts presented as far as finding the four elements for a variance to be approved. Now, if there's an alternative that we need to consider, again, we want to go in a path that's aligned. So I appreciate what needs to be decided today, as long as we just reiterated why we're here, why it's gotten here, and why we're taking up the city's time with this appeal to begin with.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I have 10 speakers cards. If anyone is going to speak and not submitted one of these, so we're going to give each one of you 3 minutes. And if you like, and somebody already said the same thing that you have said, you can just refer, to that same speaker. Okay, calling on Catherine Snyder.
My name's Catherine Schneider. I live at 3832 San Augustine Drive, and my husband and I have been property owners there since 2007, and we built our house there. I'm urging you today to uphold the decision that was made by the hearing officer back in July of last year, 2025. The owner has stated that they inherited this challenge, although they went into the purchase of that property with their eyes wide open as far as the non-compliance of that wall. Since the hearing in June, July of last year, as I travel up and down Chevy Chase, I have seen ongoing trade trucks, gates open, hardscape being modified or added. And my concern with that is that maybe the any improvements could be further obscured as a hardship. So again, I'm just asking you, commissioners, to please uphold the hearing officer's decision and do not grant this appeal, do not grant this variance. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much. Green Whiffler.
Good job. Hi, I'm Graham
I tried.
Whiffler. I am the president of the Chevy Chase Estates Association. I live at 3235 Cornwall Drive. We started getting complaints about this 4 years ago, and the complaints grew as the wall grew. You'll see in photos that we have, you can actually see from some of the drive-by photos that Google did of the guy putting blocks into the wall at around 2020, 22. The planning hearing officer did a great job. She was did all her homework. She knew the facts. She knew the fact that it had started way back when with a variance denial, and they still went ahead and built it. And then the fact that it was added on to recently, and then it kept getting higher and higher and higher. The variance officer also asked something that I thought was kind of interesting. She asked the owner whether they knew about the house, the problem with the fence. Did they know that it was before the planning commission as being an illegal fence at the time of purchase? And that had been disclosed. That was known. Could I have my picture, please? So 4 findings have to be made. And none of them have been made. They weren't even close. So to overturn even one, it was difficult, but to get all 4. This is what the house looks like. This is what the wall looks like, what the house next to it looks like. This is a textbook on why we have zoning for compliance, for compatibility. There's probably about 3 to 4 feet of earth underneath there on an illegal retaining wall. And then on top of that is a concrete block wall. And then on top of that, there's another wall. and it completely dwarfs the neighbors. There is no house like it in Chevy Chase. There's no house like it in any of Glendale. Nobody has a wall like that. It looks like a walled compound. And the Chevy Chase Estates Association asks you to find the hearing officer and reject the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Kurbsak.
I'm Tim Krubsack. I've lived in Chevy Chase Canyon for 15 years, close to this property. Sympathize with the homeowner and the problem they're having, but I do feel like this is a issue where if it were to have a variance, it would be encouraging other people to follow the mantra, better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. I feel like it would just be really opening the floodgates to doing whatever you want and then coming and trying to get approval after the fact. So I hope you uphold the hearing officer's decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack Daly.
Good afternoon. Mrs. Fuentes, gentlemen, Mr. Wong. I uphold the ruling on this. I'm completely for the denial. Everybody's talked so much about the setbacks and feet, and you were talking about, Graham was talking about 3 different additions maybe to the wall or 2, what have you. I've been a resident of this city in 13 months for 90 years. Lived there for 90 years. I've been in this canyon. I've lived there for 56 years. I grew up as a kid in the 40s and the 50s in this canyon. And I think we want to understand, why are we here? It's to not have something like this. It's good to see that the denial came through, that I hope you support, because there's just a period of time where we just say enough is enough, folks. We're all here, we love this area. We're all here, the applicant, I'm sure you do too. Nothing against you personally. I don't blame you for wanting to live up here. It's beautiful. But sometimes we're just missing the point, but thank God there's guidelines that we have in the city that we can say this is against that or that, and I don't know, 30 or whatever the stuff is. But this is just a working process. There's so many other things in Glendale, sure, that we all have questions about. But going way back, as you said, sir, why? Why wasn't this brought up then? There's a lot of stuff like that. But I support your decisions. You guys see more of this than any of us do. You know more about it, but I think it was the right decision. I support it, and thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. Charles Snyder.
Hi, Charles Schneider. I live at 3832 St. Augustine Drive, and I have all this written, and my wife covered most of it. So we didn't work together on this, so I didn't know what she was going to say. Just want to say one thing that just occurred to me when I came in tonight is one thing to consider: would a variance have been issued on this if they'd come to you before it was built? And I think if it wasn't at that time, why would it be granted now? I also have, serious concerns about the stability and the liability of, you don't know what that wall is. When we built our house, we did a 6-foot fence, and the city had to come out to inspect our holes. This is a lot more than that, and nobody knows what's in there. So I think there's a lot of liability and just concern there. I think, a permitting process exists to ensure construction and modifications comply with local building code, blah, blah. You know all of this. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Vera Hurani.
Hello, my name is Vera Hurani. I live on 3199 Buckingham Road. I have been a resident of Glendale since 1997. That's almost 30 years. The bottom line is, Glendale prides itself in having really strong building codes. We are going through a little, rebuild ourselves, and we understand the rules and why they're there. And I think, as Tim mentioned, it opens up a floodgate of, if one resident can get away with building something so monstrous and then getting a variance for it, I think it would start a domino effect of sorts. And again, we live in Glendale because it's such a beautiful place to live, with so much greenery, and this white monstrosity is just so, it really sticks out from the rest of any of the homes on Chevy Chase Road. So, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Leticia Gonzalez.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Leticia Gonzalez, and I also have lived in Glendale since 1995. And I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. It's such a beautiful city. And again, we just want things to, people to follow the rules. And I think that when they were presented and they were denied all four, whatever they came up with, I think that they should respect that. And I hope that you guys take that into account, that, it has gone through a hearing before and they brought in their argument. And I just hope that you guys respect that. Thank you.
Thank you. Palma Vincenti.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners, all 5 of you. Thank you for your time this evening in deciding whether or not you will vote to overturn the decision of the hearing officer for which this appeal process has been called. My name is Palma Vincenti. I'm here with my husband, John Vincenti, and I am a board member of the Chevy Chase Estates Association, here to support their opposition to this appeal. I've been a licensed real estate broker for over 40 years in the state of California, and I am a lifelong resident of Glendale and residing in Chevy Chase Canyon for at least 40 years. It was a poor and hapless decision made by the present owners of this property because they chose to purchase the property that had an active code violation filed against it for the massive, non-code compliant and illegally constructed wall erected by the previous owners. This violation had to be disclosed to them by their real estate agent as required by law. And they could have submitted their offer to purchase subject to their ability to obtain a variance. Unfortunately, you cannot be swayed by the emotional pleas of this appellant to reverse the decision of the hearing officer because there is no legal basis to do so. On what grounds would you arbitrarily choose to overturn the hearing officer's decision that did not support even one of the 4 findings that were required? Doing so, you would publicly admit to the complete incompetence of staff. And I don't think you want to do that. Also, take into serious consideration the 1,700 neighbors, many of whom have complained to the CCA and questioned the legality of this fort-like complex that does not conform to the building aesthetic of the surrounding canyon properties. The CCA implores you to sustain a decision of the planning officer.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions for me?
Nina Pecora Garcia.
Hello, good evening. My name is Nina Pecora Garcia. I have lived in the area, in the Chevy Chase Canyon, for 45 years, and in Glendale for over 50 years. My friends here have said everything there is to say. The wall was built little by little. There's something that Mr. Nazarian was asking about the inside part. I drive by there constantly. I live on Sheridan Road, by the way. Where you see in that photo, you see the little pipes coming out by the palm tree, by that little palm tree. Okay, that's what the current level is of the patio, the front. That's where the original illegal little wall was. As they built it up, they kept filling up. What's behind it, I don't know, because I've never been inside, but that's what that goes. I'm 5'2", I barely come to halfway that height. Please uphold the hearing officer's findings. She did a great job, point by point. And my friends have already said everything else that needs to be
Okay,
said.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Douglas Hughes?
Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I'll just get right to the point. I want you to uphold the hearing officer's decision, but I'll give you my basis of reasoning. I've been a resident and homeowner since 1998 at 3168 East Chevy Chase Drive. I am a daily walker in the canyon. Please don't run me over, I'm just begging you. I'm 6'4" tall. So if the wall is above my head and I have to lean back to see it, well, that's a problem. It's actually the problem of the city, and they have made a decision, and I support that. I would ask the homeowner if the next door neighbor down the hill would build a border wall that was in proportion to that wall taller, so it actually blocked the sunlight and the view. Would they be okay with it? And I know the answer is no. No one wants to live in a walled compound. No one wants to live next to a walled compound. I also have myself watched this accrete and grow, illegal backfill, illegal building, and I reject out of hand the mention of the oak tree. That oak tree was perfectly healthy when I moved into the canyon. So if anything has been done, it's been done at the detriment of the oak. So that's a red herring, and it's not applicable to this meeting. I would also say that if you look at Google Street View and flip back in time, and I think all of you should do that, you will see the growth here unpermitted. And I think that this is a badge of shame for the city that they allowed this to happen and they didn't put their foot down. I will tell you that if you let this go through, there will be others emboldened by this. And there already is an example up Linda Vista of a front fence over my head. So I think it's incumbent upon you to enforce the decision of the hearing officer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone on the phone or?
No.
Nothing?
No callers.
Okay. We can go to rebuttal.
Thank you. I'll keep it concise. I appreciate what's been conveyed by our neighbors and whoever voiced their concerns. A few things that I just wanted to respond to rather than getting into the weeds of much. During the hearing and in front of the planning hearing officer, one of the things that we did communicate was even if the wall was not there, we would have applied for this variance with a good faith argument under those 4 elements. So I just wanted to address that as far as us as the new homeowner trying to reflect what good faith efforts look like instead of reinforcing bad actors, and wanting to make it clear that across however many previous owners there have been at this property, that we are trying to change that bad or ignoring the city or ignoring the codes. And we were made aware during the time of purchasing the property, but like the fellow residents have conveyed, we're also longtime residents, born and raised in Glendale, and we chose to take this on with a good faith interest in working with the city inspector and anyone else from the city to go about this in an appropriate way. So I just want to highlight that, and not as a sense of fluff, but a sense of this is why we're here in front of you. So I do want to make that clear to all of our neighbors as well. Otherwise, again, any of those concerns that we kind of touched upon before and the substance of the variance also addresses is we as the applicant have no interest in what was previously done for the aesthetics or the appearance or trying to justify the wrongdoings of the previous owners. To the extent that we submitted this variance applications with the concerns we have of its circumstances that it's in today, that we did purchase it with, to make sure that we can find a reasonable middle ground between strict application of the codes that are to address the circumstances at hand versus the features and the conditions that would cause a disproportionately undue hardship to us as the property owner in this location with its characteristics, with the facts that are not really standard at hand. So I just wanted to keep it to those things. Otherwise, I appreciate everyone coming today and giving me the opportunity to respond to their concerns as well.
Thank you. Does anyone have last-minute questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. Staff, do you have any close? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing portion. Let's go to deliberation.
I can start. Thank you, Chair Fuentes. I want to say thank you to the appellant for taking the time and come speak with us, and thank you to everybody for your comments. I just want to start by a quick comment to staff. This is separate. It doesn't change my opinion on how we're going to hear this, but it would have been nice to get some comment in the staff report about how this is a new owner, because the way it reads, it kind of infers that it's been the same quote-unquote bad actor for 25 years. Until you get to Exhibit 5 in our staff report, it's not mentioned that there was a change in title in 2024. So I know it doesn't change the legal context in meeting the findings of a variance, but it would have just been nice context to have as opposed to just reading the timeline without that information present and then getting to it in page 42 of the staff report. So just my personal anecdote on that. As far as meeting the findings of the variance, it was mentioned by the appellant that there may be some structural impacts associated with removal of the wall, but there's no evidence from a structural engineer provided that illustrates what impact, in their opinion, there would be if the wall was removed or a different wall was proposed. And in my opinion, our job as a planning commission, and it was mentioned by my colleague very well earlier, is not to consult on what changes to make when submitting a variance. I would suggest that you work with staff to iron out those details. Our job is to take the findings presented to us by staff and try and meet the legal findings to either approve or deny a variance based on the 4 findings that need to be met. And in my personal opinion, and thank you for being candid about knowing about this when you acquired the property, but if you purchased a property knowing that there was a code violation in place, that alone to me doesn't constitute a practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship. So it's difficult for me to meet the findings or to come to a different conclusion than the planning hearing officer just based on all of the information presented to us. And I don't think it's within our purview necessarily to suggest an alternative design proposal. So I'm curious to hear what my fellow commissioners have to say, but that's my initial thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I understand the owner's perspective. I sympathize with that. I appreciate all the comments we received from public. Looking at that wall, some people may even find it okay with the black and white contrast and everything. But reading all the documents, going through everything, and thank you for whoever suggested on that Google timeline, which really clarified what happened. And reading the zone and codes again, thank you, staff, for recommending those sections. I just can't justify the appeal and support it. I think the hearing officer made the right call. I think this wall is out of place with the size and everything. I don't know what the solution is, if there's a midway solution or anything, but with everything I'm seeing here, I just can't support the appeal. So that's right now, that's where I'm leaning toward.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Malikian?
Thank you. So hypothetically speaking, assuming that we're here and we're going to be reviewing this, and the first time we're going to look at this wall, and you're presenting this wall as a brand-new wall, and it's not built. And when it comes in front of us, and let's say we say, okay, we grant you the variance, the next step would be is to get a soils engineer, get a structural engineer, go through the building process, meet with traffic, meet with water and power, and review all the conditions that it's going to impede and bring into all the indigenous trees that you mentioned. It's not shown on the survey. We can only see it on the site plan. So hypothetically saying that if this is, I'm not saying it is or it's not, the process of going through the permit process from this point on will force you to demolish that building wall anyways, to justify what the foundation and the support of this wall is going to be. So without removing or verifying or doing some exercise to understand how it was built, how stable it is, and which engineer is going to take the full responsibility, stamp those plans, and take it through the city, and then the city come in inspecting what was constructed as a foundation, as retaining walls, the impact of that, all that concrete around the oak tree. So all of those need to be reviewed and have to be approved. So variance is not just one step, just saying, okay, you got the variance or you're good to go. I agree with my colleagues, and a purchase of a property with a violation doesn't constitute for a hardship. I would highly recommend for you to kind of step back instead of, because the variance, it's been denied since 22 years, and it's been constantly being denied. And I don't know how many times this has to go through or how many times this is going to go through, and everybody's going to say, no, you can't have this. There are conditions, there are site conditions. The variance itself, let's just hypothetically speaking, let's say you didn't have this wall and the concrete, but you had a very steep frontage that every time it rained or something happened, it fell off, or at that moment, at that time, then you can come and say, I need to get a variance to put a retaining because my soil is gradually depleting and my foundation is being exposed and my house is going to settle. Without having this retaining wall, then my house is going to be gone. This property is not going to be built. That's when you apply for a variance. That's when you get the variance. Not to add a variance, to get a variance on a wall that was originally denied and then it grew to be taller and taller to create a privacy. If a variance is proposed for a wall that it needs security, meaning cars are driving by, there's other things. Well, I think that's a city public works and engineering and traffic issue. I think they need to be brought to attention. They need to come and visit that corner. Maybe they need some secure bollards or something there, some fencing, something there to protect people, not to kind of project over to your property. But building a 12-foot wall in front of your property that does not exist in anywhere in Glendale. I drove by in LA. There are properties in Encino and stuff I saw, and I was like looking at these and it's like, this is pretty interesting, if you get this, but it's not Glendale. Glendale is open, it's charming, small homes that are, they're fond of having, they present their front yard and so forth. But there are a lot of code issues that I see that the variance doesn't keep you from, granting a variance would not solve those problems, in my opinion. So that's where I stand.
Okay, good.
A very short comment. I tend to agree with the July hearings of the officer, with my colleagues and all that. One of the things I was going to ask is that, if the owner is willing to do some modified project instead of 12-foot wall, maybe you can contact the city and staff and see if there's anything they can suggest you as far as the code compliance safety plan and the instead of like a 12-foot wall, I don't know, whatever that the code and all that is, to make everyone happy. And I know you are trying to keep this, but I don't, 12 feet is too much, I think. Yeah, but
Thank you.
good luck.
Okay, everything's been said. I'm going to be very short. Thank you, neighbors, for being here. I know exactly how overprotective the Chevy Chase Estates Homeowners Association is with everything in Chevy Chase area. Staff did a very thorough job, and I think the decision warrants being upheld. And I also thank the property owner for all your effort. I hope you can find some other solution that will be meeting our code requirements and also, be acceptable to the neighborhood and to all of us. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and entertain a motion.
I'm happy to move.
Second.
The motion is to uphold the decision of the hearing officer. Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Commissioner Trakchian,
Yes.
Commissioner Malikian,
Yes.
Commissioner Manassian,
Yes.
Commissioner Nazarian,
Yes.
and Chairperson Fuentes.
Yes.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all very much for being here.
Can I recommend maybe a 2-minute recess while we get long-range planning staff in here for the
Okay,
next
we'll
section?
take a 5-minute recess.
5-minute
Thank you all
recess.
for-
All right, thank you.
Planning Commission hearing of April 16. We're back in session. Let's go to new business. Now, please read the item.
Thank you. All right, so this is zoning code amendment case numbers PZC-0007-2023 and PZC-0008-2023. Project description, the Planning Commission will be making a recommendation to the City Council regarding proposed amendments to Title 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code 1995, specifically to GMC Chapter 30.11 for residential districts, regarding multifamily development standards, and to GMC Chapter 30.12 commercial districts regarding multifamily and residential mixed-use development standards in commercial zones, introduction of a new zoning code chapter, GMC Chapter 30.17 objective design standards, and other related zoning code updates. And with that, I will turn it over to our long-range planning staff.
Good evening, Chair Fuentes, Planning Commissioners. As you know, during the last Planning Commission meeting on April 1st, staff gave a detailed presentation on the proposed code amendments and objective design standards for multifamily and residential mixed-use projects in both residential and commercial zones. This was a study session where commissioners were able to ask questions, provide preliminary feedback, and to hear public testimony. Tonight, the Planning Commission is being requested to provide a formal recommendation on the proposed ordinance to City Council following any additional public testimony. To remind individuals where these new standards would apply, here is a map of the city showing the multifamily residential neighborhoods in gold and the commercial zones along the commercial corridors and centers in red. For the viewing audience who missed the study session, staff will be using certain phrases and acronyms throughout the presentation. ODS refers to objective design standards. MF would be the multifamily project. These would be the code updates and ODS in residential zones. MU would be the mixed-use project, meaning the codes, updates, and ODS in for multifamily and mixed-use residential projects in commercial zones. COSA, or COSA, would be the common open space amenity areas. We'll get into the details on that in a few slides. FAR would be the floor area ratio, the total building area divided by the lot area. So the larger the floor area ratio number, the larger the building. And DUs/AC would refer to density in terms of dwelling units per acre. The 90-page draft ordinance included as attachment 1 to the staff report represents a multi-year effort to update the residential development standards in GMC, that would be Glendale Municipal Code Chapter 30.11 residential districts, and residential and mixed-use development standards in GMC 30.12 in commercial districts. The ordinance establishes also a new objective design standards chapter, that would be GMC 30.17, for residential projects of 3 or more units in both residential and commercial zones. Also included are related amendments to landscaping, design review, and the definitions chapter in the zoning code. The new standards address several significant housing element programs by streamlining housing approvals, reducing regulatory barriers, and improving standards for mixed-use development. The key driver at this point is state law, which requires objective, measurable standards and limits discretionary review. Adoption of the ODS prior to the SB 79, that would be the Abundant and Affordable Housing Near Transit Bill, which becomes effective on July 1st, is critical to maintain some sort of local design control. So without the ODS, qualifying projects could be approved ministerially without discretionary review with limited design review. Staff also notes extensive public outreach was conducted in 2023 and 2024 as detailed in attachment 4 to your staff report. And this most recently includes a presentation discussion with the Glendale Association of Realtors just this last Monday on April the 13th. First topic addressed in the ordinance were the amendments to the residential district chapter 30.11, and I'll just try to go very quickly because many of these slides are the same, but we thought since this is a public hearing for the viewing audience, we would like to go over the fine-tuned details. The code amendments to the multifamily residential development standards and multifamily residential zones. This would be the R3050, the R2250, R1650, and R1250 zones. Begin with updates to the development standards table as shown on the screen. So again, we go through the development table chapter as it relates to the 4 different multifamily residential zones. There are residential density maximums ranging from 1 unit for every 3,050 square feet of lot area in the R3050 zone, down to or up to 1 unit for every 1,000 square feet of lot area for wider lots in the R1250 zone. Again, floor area ratio increases as the density increases. The setbacks at this time are both minimum and averages that are different for each individual floor, thus resulting in a wedding cake type building form. It includes height limits based on lot. 2 stories would be the maximum. If you have a lot that's much wider at 90 feet or more, you can go up to 3 stories. And last but not least, common open space, which are set minimums of both common and private open spaces per unit. Regarding the updates to the actual residential districts chapter, there is no change. Again, just to repeat, there's no change to the existing residential density. So densities, dwelling units per acre, are going to remain the same. The development intensity in terms of FAR, now that there also are no changes proposed to the current maximum FAR limits. Site coverage in 2 zones, the R1650 and the R1250, the lot coverage increases from 50 to 60%. The setback standards, again, we're eliminating the wedding cake, the setback minimum and averages on each floor. We'll go into the new setback standards in just a moment. Building height and massing. Across the board, 3 stories would be permitted regardless of lot width, and this would be consistent with our housing element required programs. And for open space, the changes include replacing the existing per unit open space requirements with a lot-based percentage for common open space amenity areas, referred to as COSA, the common open space amenity areas. And meanwhile, smaller scale projects, 7 units or fewer, would be able to provide increased private open space in lieu of the COSA. So developers proposing affordable housing projects that are eligible under the state's density bonus law can request concessions and waivers from all of these standards. So one of the most significant changes in the proposed residential standards, and a key topic in prior presentations, is the COSA requirement. The COSA concept is intended to help break up building massing through usable, accessible open space. Projects may choose between 2 options. The first being a 5-foot minimum and 8-foot average setback with a minimum 10% COSA, or a 6-foot minimum interior setback with modulation standards and a larger 15% COSA. COSA must be located primarily on the ground floor, within the front 80% of the lot, and outside any required setbacks. COSA areas may be configured as interior courtyards as shown on the screen, or at the front of the building, resulting in L-shaped building footprints. So in response to Planning Commission's questions during the last study session, staff met with the building official and prepared mock-ups and SketchUp of the standards, and staff can confirm that the COSA standards are feasible for both by right and density bonus projects. Should planning commissioners have alternatives to any of these standards, such as allowing the interior setback to be included in the COSA, the Planning Commission can incorporate such majority-supported feedback in your recommendation to City Council. Second major topic are the code amendments for multifamily residential and residential mixed-use developments in commercial zones. The amendments include both updates to the use table and the general development standards section, as described in the next few slides. Here we show the changes to the existing commercial land use table. So a key change is the removal of the requirement for residential projects and commercial zones to comply with R1250 standards. So these are being replaced by new standards. And the removal of the conditional use permit requirement for multifamily projects and commercial zones. As noted on the previous slide, the biggest change, the R1250 standards that are being eliminated are replaced with new development standards. No change is proposed to increase the residential density limit currently on the books at 43 units to the acre. So again, the R1250 density limit remains the same, though the R1250 standards no longer will apply. The other standards are updated to be more in line with typical mixed-use developments in commercial zones, such as reduced setbacks and open space. And meanwhile, the current R1250 height limit of 2 or 3 stories, depending on the lot width, will be updated to reflect the current height limit in the commercial zones. Another key change in the commercial chapter described during the study session is the introduction of a consistent pedestrian-focused public realm standard. Today, commercial buildings and commercial zones can be built right up to the property line, which can be as low as 7 to 10 feet from the street. Under this new approach, all new buildings must provide a 12-foot distance from the curb to the building facade or build-to line defined in the ODS, even if that space extends into private property. This applies to all residential, mixed-use, and commercial buildings and commercial zones as directed by City Council for a more consistent walkable streetscape. Note, the graphic has been updated to reflect the 12-foot setback that applies only to the ground floor and up, and not to the subterranean parking or building footings below. And just to follow up on another point made during the April 1st study session, Assembly Bill 3177, which prohibits local agencies from requiring land dedication for street widening, does not apply to the public realm dedication. So in addition to the updates in the residential and commercial zoning chapters, the bulk of the proposed ordinance is centered on the new objective design standards. As discussed in the study session, the ODS are limited to clear, measurable, and verifiable standards and convert more subjective design guidelines into objective requirements. Similar to the Downtown Specific Plan and the Tropico TOD zoning, the standards are organized around site planning, massing and scale, and architectural elements. The chapter begins with the purpose, which is to provide objective standards that ensure high quality, context-sensitive development and clear, predictable requirements for applicants. It goes on to in terms of the applicability. This applies to new residential projects of 3 or more units and supports streamlined ministerial review for eligible affordable housing projects. Projects not meeting the state eligibility remain subject to design review. And definitions introduce new key terms such as articulation, modulation, and step back for clarity and consistency. The ODS then addresses multifamily residential development in residential districts and residential mixed-use development in commercial districts. Residential site planning standards emphasize building placement through these simplified setbacks and the integration of the COSA. The ODS section has specific design standards for these COSA areas, and the ODS also prioritizes limiting the location of vehicular access with driveways off alleys where possible, and requiring landscape setbacks appropriate for traditional multifamily residential neighborhoods. ODS differs in focus between the residential and commercial site planning design standards. So in commercial zones, landscape street fronts and interior setbacks are not required. Instead, the standards prioritize the public realm by establishing a consistent 12-foot setback from the curb. The ODS in both residential and commercial zones also include requirements for walls and fences, utilities and mechanical equipment, and outdoor lighting. So moving on to the massing and scale section, similar concepts apply in both residential and commercial districts. Horizontal and vertical modulation are intended to reduce the building bulk, avoid box-like forms, and provide height transitions between new and existing buildings. Horizontal modulation refers to variations in facade width using offsets, projections, and recesses to break up the building width. Vertical modulation refers to variations in height, such as stepping back floors at the upper stories to create height transitions. The standards also include facade articulation requirements, which add architectural elements to further break down building mass into smaller, more human-scaled components. The next several slides illustrate the horizontal and vertical modulation standards. As previously detailed during the study session, horizontal modulation standards require building facades to be broken into segments to avoid long, flat wall planes. The ODS ordinance includes definitions for facade and for facade segments, which refer to the exterior wall and its recessed or projecting building segments. As a result, any building elevation, and this would be the building elevation, not the site, not the lot width, that are 50 feet or wider must be divided into two segments as shown on the screen. This approach allows for flexibility and design creativity for projects on the many 50-foot wide lots throughout the city and has been supported by the DRB and the Architects Group. Building facades greater than 100 feet in length would be required to include a recess or projection to create a three-segment elevation. For density bonus projects with additional height and stories, any fourth floor and above would also have to provide a minimum 10-foot step back. When adjacent to a single-family zone, such multifamily projects would be required to have an additional step back of 10 feet above the second floor to ensure compatibility and provide an appropriate transition to the adjacent 1- and 2-story single-family residences at the rear. The next several slides highlight horizontal and vertical modulation standards for multifamily and mixed-use projects in commercial zones, as shown during the study session and presented to City Council, DRB, and the stakeholder groups. So the horizontal modulation standards are similar in commercial zones. The main differences are that the horizontal modulation is not required unless the facade in a commercial zone is greater than 90 feet in width, which is versus the 50 feet in residential zones, and that the ground floor commercial spaces are not required to have the horizontal modulation recesses. Vertical modulation in commercial zones is intended to reduce the perceived bulk at the top of the building by stepping upper floors back from the lower levels. Vertical modulation applies only to buildings 45 feet and taller. A 10-foot step back is required for any story above 45 feet along street-facing facades, and that would be the elevation on the left-hand side. That's not exactly visible, but that an additional transitions are included, which would show the 10-foot step back at the rear story abutting residential zones, and additional upper story step backs in the CH zone. This would be along Foothill Boulevard on slope lots next to single family areas. In addition to horizontal and vertical modulation, facade articulation modulation is also required to reduce massing and scale. Facade segments must incorporate a minimum of one and a maximum of 2 articulation options, such as projecting bays, ground floor recesses, vertical notches, frame projections, and architectural shading devices, each differentiated from the primary facade by material or color, and each option has its own set of standards. Based on comments received during the study session, staff is proposing an additional articulation option, which would be architectural banding. If supported by Planning Commission, this additional option could be added to your formal recommendation to Council. The third topical ODS section focuses on architectural elements, which are largely consistent across both residential and commercial districts. The ODS include objective regulations for facade cladding materials and colors, roof forms and materials, fenestration, balconies, awnings and canopies, and vents, gutters, and downspouts. The main difference between residential and commercial ODS relate to building entries and ground floor design. In residential zones Entries must face the street, walkway, or open space and include architectural features for all lobby entries, porches, and stoops. Whereas in commercial zones, ground floor designs must be more pedestrian-oriented, with at least 50% transparent street-facing facades, clearly defined entries, and landscape buffers for ground floor residential units, and no dark or opaque windows are permitted. As discussed in the previous study session, the architectural elements section of the ODS includes detailed fenestration standards. These standards address window design, placement, and rhythm along residential facades. The ODS provides a range of window patterns to choose from, including stacked, offset, framed grouped, unframed grouped, and curtain wall systems. Each pattern includes specific standards for window size, alignment, and placement. And should planning commissioners have alternatives to any of these standards, the Planning Commission can incorporate such majority-supported feedback in your recommendation to City Council. Last but not least, the final section of the draft ordinance includes miscellaneous zoning code amendments related to the updates and the ODS. Chapter 3031, Landscaping, is updated to reflect the new standards from the residential, commercial, and ODS chapters. Chapter 3047, regarding design review, is amended to reflect the ODS applicability. And this is consistent with state law that qualifying affordable housing projects under density bonus law that meet all standards, this would include the development standards and the ODS, can be approved ministerially and bypass design review. Projects requesting additional waivers would still be subject to design review. And Chapter 30.70, which would be definitions, this chapter adds new terms for facade, primary facade, facade segment, and also one for low barrier navigation center, a type of housing shelter designed to reduce barriers to entry and provide supportive services. As noted during the April 1st study session, the proposed amendments are exempt from CEQA. They involve only minor updates to development standards with no changes to density or building height and no potential for significant environmental impacts. All future individual projects will still be reviewed under CEQA as needed. So tonight, the Planning Commission is being asked to hear public testimony, provide feedback on the draft ordinance, and make a formal recommendation to City Council. City Council is currently scheduled for May 12th for introduction and May 19th for adoption. And if adopted on May 19th, the ordinance would take effect 30 days later on June 20th, just ahead of the July 1st effective date for SB 79. Staff has received 3 comment letters, one from Mike Borisov, one from Susan Bolin on behalf of Crescenta Valley Community Association, and one from Mary Lynn Fisher on behalf of the Crescenta Highlands Neighborhood Association. All 3 of those correspondence emails were provided to the Planning Commission ahead of this public hearing. With that, staff concludes our presentation for the evening, and we are more than available to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. That's a very thorough presentation. We have a very big audience tonight, so I don't have a speaker card. Do we have anyone on the phone?
We actually have no callers this evening.
Wow. Comments from board members, commissioners?
I have one question.
Okay, one question here.
I was informed today that the AB 79, there's a petition to postpone the date of July. If that gets postponed, what's going to happen to this, whatever that we're talking about? What's it, ODS?
Commissioner Manassian, there have been a number of trailer bills and cleanup bills that have been proposed at the state legislature. However, until those bills are formally adopted and signed by the governor, staff is intending to continue working on the ODS to make sure that in case SB 79 does go into effect on July 1st, that we are well prepared with the updated standards.
Okay, so in case comes July 1st and this bill doesn't take effect and it gets postponed. Are we still, the staff is going to still work on this ODS project to make it perfect, or is it just going to be submitted and done with it?
So staff is intending to move forward with the ODS and the updated standards before City Council next month. The council may choose to adopt it, may choose not to adopt it. However, if not adopted, and depending on how the bills lay out in the future, there is just this suggested and recommended direction to move forward at this time.
So we're moving forward with
Right.
with the whole thing.
And even if the city council does adopt the city, if the city council adopts the draft ordinance, these standards are not set in stone. They can be amended at a future date. And so this would just be a zoning ordinance revision, amendment, code amendment at a future date, provided there's other additional direction or changes that might be suggested by city council. So these are not permanent standards in the zoning code.
Good, okay.
Oh, and I apologize. We just received one caller just called in.
Let's get
Would
the-
you like to take that?
Yes, let's go ahead.
Okay. Beth Brooks, you're live on the air with the Planning Commission.
Hi, how are you? Thank you very much. Number one, I wanted to say that, if you're saying that, the council has to spend time to look at this and adopt it, but they can change it later, don't do anything. Why would you double up the amount of work that the council has to do? The council has a lot of important work to do. So if it's necessary to actually revisit this, you should fine tune it before it comes to council. That's my personal opinion. I don't think you should double up their work. Give them something that's clear and that's perfect, and then not say here's something that you can change later. You know that I oppose the adoption of this ordinance as it is. I also feel that you've only included input that was 2 years old. So that is, if I didn't object to anything else, I would totally object to that. That's the last time that you're incorporating input into this change to the objective design standards. That already should say that you shouldn't include this. I believe that you've actually weakened protections that residents have been relying on and that they want. They want to preserve neighborhood scale, the green space, privacy, character, much more than this is allowing. You are still making things higher and density easier to build, and actually people are saying they want objective design standards because the state laws have already streamlined that. So now we have to push back a little bit to regain a little bit of local control. So I think that's a problem. I think the reduction in the meaningful open space and setbacks is a real problem. The narrower landscaped areas, more compact FAR, less usable outdoor areas, less distance between buildings. And just the idea that you have these criteria that can bypass review and you're making it worse is a real problem. Is a real problem. What we want to do is the opposite. You want to bypass community review because you're ensuring that these projects will actually fit the areas better, and there's more distance between buildings, that there's more open space. So this is creating the opposite effect that it's supposed to create. But my biggest problem is that you've created a document based upon 2-year-old feedback. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brooks.
Sure.
Do we have another caller?
We have no other callers.
Okay, that's it. Okay, Planning Commission. That's it?
Yes, and
Okay.
thank you. So we're taking Chair. Oh, there it is. Now the timer went off. Thank you. So Chair Fuentes, Planning Commissioners, the urgency is not just for the SB 79 enactment. There are also numerous state bills, such as Senate Bill 35, the Streamlined Affordable Housing Bill, Senate Bill 167, the Housing Accountability Act, amendments in Senate Bill 330, the Housing Crisis Act of 2019. These all require that housing development projects be reviewed solely on objective design standards. And so we've run into the situation on a few other projects as of late. And so that is another reason why the objective design standards are being put forward to you now after a number of years of continued work and previous public outreach. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, staff. Okay, we need to make a recommendation to City Council. We either adopt the draft ordinance as proposed, adopt it with comments and suggestions, or do not adopt the draft ordinance. Commissioner Nazario?
Yeah, before we move to voting, I just had one quick question, and I was hoping staff can educate me a little bit better, understand the letter from Mike Borisov. I'm just trying to understand what he's asking, and if staff considered it, and we're not moving forward with that. Some of the comments he has about reducing 90 feet minimum lot to 65 or facade ornaments. So I just would like to hear staff commenting on what he recommended, if staff agreed on it or anything in that regard you can explain for my understanding.
Yes, Commissioner Nazarian. Mike Borisov's letter spoke in regards to the ornamental facades as shown in the photographs that he included. And so rather than having different articulation options or requiring a recess, that the building be allowed to just be completely unrecessed, unmodulated, but then also have an ornamental banding as seen in some of the photographs. So that is one of the reasons why staff is putting forward that additional articulation option in terms of that banding be correct, and that was included as part of the slide. Go back. Yes, and actually, if you don't mind, that would be wonderful. We'll go back, except for.
Yep, there it is.
Go.
Yeah,
The new one.
the one that is.
Correct. The ornamental bands on the far right-hand side.
Okay.
Thank you. How about his request about the 65 feet lot?
Again, our typical lots in the city are 50 by 150. When there are lot consolidations, then they go up to increments of 50. We typically do not see 65-foot wide lots. We specifically have the codes written so that the recesses, the offsets, only begin for facades that are 50 feet or wider. So essentially, for a 65-foot wide lot, you would, depending on which option you choose, you'd have a 50 or 55-foot wide street front facade, and yes, that would still need to be articulated.
Okay, anything else?
Thank you.
One more clarification question on the ornamental design. Apologies if I missed this, but are all of these articulation proposals for a specific like lot size requirement? Is it for anything beyond 100 feet on the facade that they're required to have a minimum of 1, maximum of 2, or it's just for all projects within the zones that we're looking at altogether?
This one of the facade articulation modulation options would be required per facade segment.
Per facade segment?
Correct.
So you're just including the ornamental bands per facade segment, and so you're not incorporating a comment of, like, you would still require, for example, the horizontal modulation, even if there was an ornamental band at every facade segment, or could they bypass that and just have one uniform building if it maintained ornamental bands in every facade segment of the uniform building?
The way that the proposal ordinance, or in this case, the modified proposal is that would be, you would, for buildings with the option number 2, so this would be the 6-foot uniform setback, you would have to have a modulation. based on the horizontal modulation standards, and each of those facade segments would have to have an one of these architectural modulation options. If you are a developer who chooses option 1, which would be the 5-foot minimum, 8-foot average, which would be different because you don't have to apply the horizontal modulation standards to those facades, then you would still be choosing one of the articulation modulation options.
And just for the record, in that scenario, you could have a building that has no modulation on the facade as long as it has ornamental banding and incorporates at least one or two of these components.
In that case, Chair or Commissioner Crochin, the 5-foot minimum, 8-foot average would de facto lead to modulation across a facade. It just wouldn't be the 3-segmented or the 2-segmented facade that you would see for
I
the
just
horizontal.
raise it and we can deliberate it, but I think Mr. Borisov's comment was intended to be in exchange for some of that modulation, you could theoretically have an ornamental facade for a structure, and that structure could be uniform, is how I interpret it. So we can deliberate it further, but this is kind of a meet in the middle.
This, and Commissioner Crochin, when staff reviewed Mr. Borisov's email, the fact that a ornamental band that might be simply just one band between the ground floor and a second floor would not be sufficient to adequately modulate a big boxy building.
No, it makes sense.
If the Planning Commission feels otherwise, you're more than welcome to provide that in your recommendation.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, just so we know the difference between the two. I have a few more questions. They're primarily focused on the common open space amenity section. I just want to go talk through a little bit of the logic behind it. There's a portion in here that mentions that for projects that are 7 units or less, an applicant can get COSA waived and have private balconies instead, as long as they're offering the minimum open space requirement. Was any consideration given by staff to make that a lot size requirement as opposed to a unit minimum?
Commissioner Crochin, this was discussed at the staff level, simply because when you look at our inclusionary housing ordinance, and typically, or I should say traditionally, open space requirements have always been set a certain percentage per unit for the common open space and a certain set square footage for the private open space per unit. When it comes to a percentage, you mentioned of the lot area, this is what the COSA is referring to essentially, because you're looking at a common open space for all of the lots, and the allowance for having private open space for projects 7 units or less would be in regards to comments we've received for those smaller projects that are essentially side-by-side units, the 6-packs, what we refer to affectionately, on the smaller lots. So in those cases, when you have side-by-side units, you'd be able to have those side-by-side patios that are the larger 200 square foot private open spaces, rather than having one common open space. If the Planning Commission chooses to consider increasing the number of units for which the private open space versus the common open space, the COSA, might be applicable, that is up to the Planning Commission to make that recommendation.
Okay, and my other question is regarding the requirement that 80%, the COSA areas must be located within the front 80% of a lot and include amenities and landscaping. And my question for staff is, why mandate which portion of the lot the COSA needs to take place in, as long as all of the units can access the COSA, and it's not directly abutting, say, a private patio, because I know originally the intent was so that people wouldn't put the common open space amenity in the back of a property, but if a building is situated as such where all of the residents can utilize like a private open area in the back of a property, and that can also be utilized as a further setback away from an abutting property behind, it may actually result in a better scenario, not just for the owner looking to develop the subject property, but also for the neighbors, because they may have open space in between their lot and the abutting lot. So something that I would throw out is maybe to remove the restriction of it absolutely needing to occur in that first 80%, as long as all of the residents in a building can access and utilize the public or the common open space, because that space is really to be designed for renters of a building, and for it to be favorable for them, to give them some sort of additional benefit or amenity to just their own interior unit space. So as long as it's done in a way that's benefiting the residents of a building, I don't see why it makes sense to mandate for it not to occur in that back 20%, and also why that can't be counted towards the setback.
Okay. Anything? Commissioner Malikian?
Thank you. I guess last meeting I went over quite a bit. I don't have much to say, but I do want to kind of jump on the conversation that we were talking about as far as the common open space. One question that I have, the option of 8-foot, 5-foot average setback, does that mean the common open space also has to have what is the minimum setback for that option?
Commissioner Malikian, the common open space would have to be outside of any required setback, such as an interior setback, but the 5-foot minimum, 8-foot average would apply to the entire building footprint and the building up above. So rather than
So the reason that I'm saying is I guess there's a section which I would like to ask my colleagues here to see if we can amend this, that include the side yard as part of the common area. But having said that, if that is not the case, right now, as I see the 6-foot option, I would say, okay, then we have a 6-foot setback, the COSA sits at the 6-foot line. On an 8-foot, 5-foot, 8-foot average, what happens to that option? Does that kind of, it's all open, so it really, which setback would it be used if they don't accept the?
The COSA would have to just meet the minimum setback, so 5-foot setback. It would not apply to the average 8-foot.
Got it. So again, going back to that, I would suggest to include the side yard as part of the COSA. The other, going back to the ornamental design, and I guess there's a minimum depth or the dimension of that. There's certain, I can't find it right now. I went through last time throughout, I read this whole thing in front to back. There was a portion that it talks about projection into the setbacks. Does these articulations and ornaments allow to be projected into the setback? Is there some statement or something written in there?
Yes, Commissioner Malikian, the residential districts chapter includes exceptions for interior
would
setback
stay-
projections. So we specifically address things like the framed projection. The framed projections would be permitted to extend, I believe it's 12 inches into any required setback area.
Got it.
So if ornamental banding was put forth by the Planning Commission, we would also make that same update to the residential districts chapter as well. To allow for that projection, that is.
The, another suggestion is the balcony projection. that under the balcony projection, it restricts any projection of the balconies into the, I think that will take away from the living spaces. I think we would need to allow some kind of a projection. It could be, 5%, 10%, whatever it is, to allow some, alleviate the, obviously 5 foot, you can't put a balcony right up to the property line. You also have building issues that you have to face with, but, some projection of that, maybe railings or some projection, I would suggest if we can add that. And then the last thing is that the 12-foot setback for the commercial properties, or I should say, the added, essentially, we're forcing all the commercial properties to give up at least 2 feet, if not more, if they want to develop of their property. So that's something that I want to talk about, at least, if we want to do this, maybe we just do it on the ground level rather than completely carrying this all the way to the, eliminate any kind of a setback into this area. So I'm a little concerned about that. So I'll let my colleagues discuss about that if you guys have any feeling of that. Or other than that, I think I've brought up all my thoughts, and no, I think we're good.
Would you like me to respond to that?
Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Malikian, so this was brought up during the city council previous study sessions, and the intention was to have the entire building be set back 12 feet, simply because if you have a building with a property, or if you have a property line that's, let's say, 5 or 7 feet or from the curb face, you're essentially creating this notch, if you so will, where you'll have a 12-foot setback from the curb face to the build-to line at the first story, and then you have this massive building that's sort of somewhat cantilevered over what it's intended to be an open streetscapes with street trees, with a sidewalk and whatnot. But again, if the commission feels strongly that there should be allowed to have some sort of projection on the upper floors, you're welcome to make that as part of your recommendation.
Yeah, so I understand the reason of widening the setback or widening and providing, but I think we also need to, this is assuming the entire city of Glendale, all the commercial properties are going to be demolished and built at the 12-foot line. We have buildings that are already on the property line. We have buildings that are somewhat, do have the setback or not. I think allowing people to kind of figure some architectural, it should be a design rather than a takeaway, in my opinion. And I think this is as a takeaway rather than, it could be a condition of design review as part of the design conditions that you need to have a percentage of your front be certain, rather than saying that, you need to give up part of your property to allow, so that's my, and you say no, you shake your head. So.
Unfortunately, this is the reason behind the objective design standard, is that it cannot be subjective. It cannot go to the design review board for that review and approval. It has to be a measurable, quantifiable item, and so.
No, what I'm saying, you mean that, okay. So we have to put the condition in what we want, or, suggest.
Of course, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All done?
Yeah,
More?
I've been reviewing this since Monday, so
Okay,
I'm done,
all right.
yes.
Recommendations?
I'm just gonna make the suggestion, unless we can all come to consensus on exactly how to proceed forward in our recommendation to council, I would just say that we recommend with all comments from our prior meeting as well as today from all commissioners, just included within the staff report. That's not possible?
Thank you. Commissioner Krokchin, staff would, respectfully request that your conditions and comments, because the previous ones were individual comments by individual commissioners, and so unless there's consensus at the planning commission level, we would not be able to just go ahead and list all of the various comments from the last study session.
Can you bring up the 3 recommendations so we all can see?
But we do have it appears that there is consensus that the Planning Commission
There you go.
would like to include interior setbacks to be counted towards the COSA.
I will like that,
Yeah,
unless
I
you know,
like
if
that
you have
too.
any
I hear
objections.
consensus on that.
That's one.
It appears that there were nods or consensus in terms of the ornamental design to include that new articulation modulation option. We would include standards for that, and that we would allow projections into any interior or front setbacks for that ornamental banding.
You also suggested about the 80%, the front or.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have agreeance from you guys,
I
but
do.
my suggestion would be that we waive the 80%.
I agree.
I don't have any reason to go against it, so I'm okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay too.
So let's include that too.
So the locational criteria allow anywhere within the lot, not just the front 80%.
As long as it's accessible to all residents in the building, including ADA.
Okay, I guess we can adopt, recommend adoption of the draft ordinance with comments and suggestions noted.
There was a balcony projection.
We were just going to, yes, Yvette and I were just mentioning that we would like to have Planning Commission feedback on the balcony projections.
That's good.
What's your specific, I guess, projection?
I just think that if you completely set the balcony in, you're not allowing creativity. Also, you're taking away from the actual habitable square footage. So allowing some articulation, some movement in the balcony would allow a better usable space, as well as, you creating some of the conditions that you're looking for as far as the facade articulations and so forth, so. And I would probably say, at least, 10% or so.
Or similar to the
Or similar
ornamental.
to- Right.
Similar to the ornamental projection that we allow on the setback.
That was 12-inch, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're recommending 12?
clarifying question. When you say
About 12 inches of projection into the,
Yes,
right. Similar to the
Ornamental
articulation.
projection.
12 inches?
Yeah, not percentage, 12-inch.
Yes,
Sorry.
measurement, thank you very much.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I would be okay with that.
I am okay with that, too.
I'm
Same
okay with
here.
it too, yes.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
And lastly, it's the 12-foot setback, minimum setback from the curb to the face of commercial buildings. So I think, any thoughts on that?
I'm not in favor of that 12 feet, but I don't know the history of why council requested that. So does staff any more feedback on why that was requested? Because I'm with Commissioner. I don't know why we need to ask building to be set back additional 2 feet. What was the reasoning?
And Commissioner Nazarian, so it would not be just a setback of 2 feet. It would be essentially what's called a curb face to build to line of 12 feet. So regardless of whatever the existing conditions are or where the property line is in relation to the curb, you would have a 12-foot uniform essentially a setback. If the commission feels strongly that you would allow perhaps the first ground level or the first 12 feet from the ground to have that 12-foot curb face to build to line, and then allow the upper stories to project
2 feet.
over it.
Can we bring the section back again, please?
I think.
Would you prefer to have it allow a
10.
projection of 2 feet, or would you recommend
thought
a
based on this
projection
is
to
2
wherever the
feet.
property line is? Because this is just an illustrative example.
We're assuming we have a 10-foot sidewalk. In some cases, you have less, so the property is
Where is that
closer.
10 feet on this? I'm missing it.
No, we're just making an assumption between the curb face to the property line is 10 feet.
Oh,
That's
so
an
if
assumption.
the parkway is 5 feet, then we're going to ask
You
for
have the
7 feet setback? Oh, whoa,
That's what I'm
okay.
saying, so.
Okay.
And that is something that City Council has reviewed on 3 separate occasions and directed staff to move forward with this public realm.
Well, that changed everything
concept.
I thought about this. Okay. Now I'm even more confused why we going to do that, because that's a major setback in some instances. So I guess, what is typical parkway width we have in the city for a commercial zone? Do we have a lot of below 10 feet? I don't know.
I've seen below 10 feet.
Commissioner Nazarian, it varies.
Varies.
It depends where they are located.
It depends on the street, and sometimes it's the same street depending on which block. So
let's talk about Brand Boulevard. Let's say if somebody wants to build a building on Brand Boulevard, the sidewalk is a lot more than 12 feet, so they don't have a setback, assuming.
So
it's more than-
Commissioner Malikian, Brand Boulevard is actually, the majority of Brand Boulevard is located in the downtown specific plan, so it would follow the Brand Boulevard streetscape.
Okay, so this doesn't, so
It
this
does
is
not
a-
apply.
Okay.
This would apply only to commercial corridors such as Colorado, Broadway, Glendale, portions of Glen Oaks, and similar type streets.
A little confusing, 12 feet minimum, so is.
Can I ask one clarifying question?
Sure.
How, can staff explain how this differs from the current code, just in practice? I know we don't have an ODS section in the current code, so this is trying to achieve something new to coincide with what the state is requiring and also passing, but I'm trying to practically understand like what difference this is gonna result in relative to what's currently approved by right in our code.
So Commissioner Crochin and commissioners, right now, the majority of commercial zones do not have a setback for commercial projects. For residential projects, they have to comply with the R1250 standards, which has a 20-foot landscape setback. Well, that's one of the variance items that is typically required, for all mixed-use projects. So we are doing away with the R1250 standards. For commercial buildings that then follow the property line, those are usually at the sidewalk edge, not always, but can be. The property line ranges depending, like as we just discussed, depending on the street and the block. Council was very specific in terms of commercial corridors, and that the public realm was of great discussion for the downtown specific plan. It was a driving force for the transit-oriented development district in Tropico by the Glendale Transportation Center. And as discussed a number of times at City Council was very direct in terms of desiring a pedestrian-oriented realm. They felt that a lot of these commercial corridors with high traffic volumes and no parkways, no setbacks for public or for sidewalks and whatnot, it's not conducive to pedestrian-oriented, especially when you are proposing high-density residential and mixed-use projects. So there is an intended the intention is to have individuals living there, walking to neighboring services, walking to neighboring retail, to restaurants, to, whether it's jobs. And so when you have individuals that are then now living and working in the same environment, you want to be sure to have this appropriate public realm that includes walkways, sidewalks, and a setback.
Quick question. We
Yes.
can all agree here, if we don't like that, to recommend it in ODS, but council can still reverse it and approve it as it is, right?
Correct. This is
Okay.
the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Sure, okay. With that being said, I'm now totally against it. Understanding it more and more, I don't like it. I don't think we should require 12 feet minimum.
I
Yes.
think in lieu of the 12 feet minimum, I think we should have a landscape buffer or something between a landscape or something, but pushing the building back to extend a sidewalk over your property, I'm not.
Well, landscape buffer is going to conflict with the 0 feet setback that she
No,
was
what I'm saying
referring.
is like, there are certain zoning areas that you're required to have a 5-foot setback or a 5-foot landscape buffer between the property and the building, or 2-foot landscape buffer, whatever it is. But the point is, I'm more concerned about extending the public sidewalk over to the property, and essentially that has to be treated as it is a sidewalk.
Yeah, I'm not terribly concerned with that, Commissioner. We do that all the time. I mean, every commercial parkway or driveway, you go in private property and we walk. But let me ask you another question. This is only for new buildings? Yes.
Can you just have her address she wanted to say something.
Yes, Commissioners, the sidewalk would not have to be extended to the building face. The sidewalk would just have to be incorporated within the 12-foot public realm. So you could have essentially a narrow parkway with a street tree that's required, as proposed, a sidewalk that does not have to extend all the way to the building face, but could be set back with just a standard ADA accessible sidewalk. And what would be essentially a building adjacent zone would just provide additional relief, so that it would allow for areas for landscaping. It would allow for areas for a small outdoor dining area adjacent to an eatery.
It's a 12-foot setback from the curb.
It is a 12-foot setback from the curb, correct.
Okay. And I would just request the commissioners to please address the chair, so we're not
I'm
throwing
sorry.
all the comments back and forth, and staff is
Sure.
getting a little bit confused who to answer first. So if you
So-
would please address the chair.
Sure.
Okay. Next question?
One
Okay,
question.
go ahead.
So this is only for new buildings?
Correct.
So if existing building, there's major remodel or anything, they don't need to push it back to comply with this? If there's a building already at PL and they want to do major remodel or anything, they don't need to comply with this?
Correct, unless the building, and I'll have to confirm this, but I believe unless the building goes through some sort of improvements that remove more than 50% of the exterior roof and walls, it would still be considered and keep its legal nonconforming status and be able to maintain any existing.
Okay, I'll just make one more last comment on this to make sure everyone realizes what could happen potentially. So you could have a scenario that you have 10 feet or even 12 feet from curb face to existing building. Public Works can decide widen that street for whatever reason. They can push the curb back 1 feet, 2 feet, 6 feet, no?
No.
Okay.
Commissioner Nazarian, as mentioned during the staff presentation, AB 3371 prohibits cities from requiring street dedications for traffic flow.
I'm not talking about city acquiring any dedication. Curb movement does not constitute of right. That curb still is within right of way in that 10 feet. You can move it 3 feet. You're still within right of way. You're not acquiring any property. So it's different. I'm not moving the property line, if I'm making myself a little bit clear. So PL is here. This is the curb face, and this is the street. You can move that curb anywhere you want. The property line doesn't change, the street width doesn't change, but the curb gets closer to this building, which happens all the time. So that then will require next time this owner or the new developer coming in, because the curb is pushed back 3 feet, now the building has to go back another 3 feet. So just want to make sure you guys all realize that. Should I explain one more time, or it's still not clear?
If I may, I believe there is a provision in the ordinance that speaks to planned bulb outs not being subject to this requirement.
okay.
So if that is language that the commission would like to also add for street widening, that is another alternative.
But how do we control that? I mean, it may not be bulb out, it could be parking, parallel parking, it could be anything. It could be a LID for street, low-impact development, that curbs move all the time within the right-of-way. So my fear is when you do that, now you're impacting that property because the curb moved.
So, to read out loud what is exactly proposed in the ordinance, existing and proposed curb extensions and bioretention basins shall not be included in the 12-foot measurement.
Thank you, that's good.
Does that clarify?
It clarifies a good portion of it,
great.
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Then we're ready to make a recommendation, or do you want staff to read again the different comments that we have?
And I'm so sorry, I don't believe I heard consensus. I heard consensus in terms of not supporting the 12-foot public realm, but is there an alternative that Planning Commission would like to propose?
No alternative, I would say just not requiring this minimum 12 feet altogether. That would be my recommendation.
I second that.
Is there a majority consensus on that recommendation?
Sorry to belabor the point, but if this requirement is taken away altogether, does it have any material change from what's currently in our code?
If
we weren't to mandate a 12-foot setback, which is what's being proposed as part of the ODS, would there be any change in what you can do in these commercial zones with what is currently allowed in the code?
No, there would not. We would obviously need to make updates to the draft ordinance, but that is doable.
Then I'm also okay with getting rid of it.
Okay.
I'm okay with it too.
Okay, so supporting the elimination of the public realm standards.
And of course, City Council can bring it back, so it's just our recommendation.
That's okay, yeah.
Okay.
Ready.
Again, would be to include side yard setbacks as part of the COSA. Ornamental designs to allow for, to include ornamental designs as one of the articulation modulation options, and to allow those to project into any interior setback requirements. For balcony projections, to allow up to 12 inches to project in any required setback area. Allow, in this case, there was originally set forth to allow upper floors to project into the public realm, but now we have completely gone for the elimination. Actually, the Planning Commission supports the complete elimination of that public realm requirement, and to eliminate the locational requirement for COSAs within the first 80 feet, but instead to allow anywhere within,
as long as it's
80%,
accessible.
sorry, 80% of the front of the lot to eliminate that locational requirement.
As long as it's accessible. to
As
all
long
the-
as it is accessible to all residents, correct.
Okay.
Any other comments, suggestions, feedback?
We need
Is there a motion to?
Need a motion.
Yeah, there's a motion.
They should read the balcony.
Yes.
I can make a motion.
To recommend approval,
An
approval
with
based
the
on these
With the
conditions.
revisions recommended, yes.
Okay.
Second that.
I have a motion made by Commissioner Nazarian, and I'm sorry, was that Commissioner Malikian who seconded? Thank
Okay.
you.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Tarakian?
Yes.
Commissioner Malikian?
Yes.
Commissioner Manassian?
Yes.
Commissioner Nazarian?
Yes.
And Chairperson Fuentes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, staff.
No, thank you very much.
Okay, item 8, Community Development Department updates. Give us
Welcome, Jack.
what's coming.
And just a forecast for the next agenda, we have one appeal. This is the Hotel Indigo appeal that was continued from April 1st.
Oh, yes.
That is scheduled to be heard May 6th, and that's an appeal of a variance approval for the project. It's located at 515-523 North Central. And that is all.
Sounds good. Okay. Motion to adjourn? So adjourn.
Thank you. Yes.
So